All right, so we're diving back into Rings of Power.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, this second episode, it threw some curveballs, especially when you start comparing it to, Tolkien's actual books. You're ready to see what's canon and what's a little off.
Absolutely. I'm always up for a challenge, and let's be honest, adaptations can be a bit of a mixed bag. Sometimes they hit the mark, and sometimes
Oh, yeah.
they take creative liberties, let's say.
Let's just say. Okay, so right off the bat, Khazad Dûm, that earthquake, right?
Big one.
Big one. And they're blaming it on Mount Doom erupting.
Yeah, that's where things get a little shaky.
Shaky, literally. So here's the thing, and this is where your analysis was spot on.
Okay.
If you look at Tolkien's maps, the geography, Khazad Dûm and Mount Doom, they're like hundreds of miles apart. Hundreds.
Yeah, Tolkien was very precise about his geography. I mean, he practically invented the landscape of Middle-earth. Rivers, mountains, even the types of rock formations. He had it all meticulously planned out.
Exactly. So an earthquake in Khazad Dûm, caused by a volcano that far away.
It stretches the limits of geological plausibility, to say the least.
It's like, did the show just, forget how far apart those places are? Or, and this is a bit of a scary thought, are they playing fast and loose with Tolkien's whole world? Is this a sign of things to come?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, if they're willing to make that kind of change,
right?
What else might they be willing to tweak? It's a slippery slope.
A slippery, earthquake-prone slope. Okay, and speaking of things that don't quite add up, we've got Narvi.
Oh, yeah, Narvi.
Dwarf shows up. Great. Love to see a name straight from the books.
Tolkien deep cut.
Totally. But then, and you were right to flag this, they've got him doing what? Some kind of mining surveying?
Yeah, they've got him all over the place, but not where he should be.
Not as the legendary blacksmith of his people.
Which he is. In the books, Narvi's the master craftsman. He makes these incredible things like the doors of Durin.
Right. I mean, that's his whole thing. And now they've got him, looking for mithril veins.
It's a head scratcher for sure.
Feels like they just saw a name they liked and were like, yeah, let's stick him in here. But it matters. It changes everything.
It does. In Tolkien's work, Narvi's skills, his profession, it's all connected to the larger story. His relationships, his fate, it all stems from his craft.
Yeah.
So to change that, it's like they're writing a whole new character with the same name.
Exactly. And then what? This new Narvi, he's not going to have that same connection with Celebrimbor, the whole Master Smith thing.
Oh, right.
Okay. Let's take a breath, move on to something a little less earth-shattering. Gandalf. What is going on with Rune?
Sand. A lot of sand.
A whole lot of sand. And I don't know about you, but when I think of Rune, based on Tolkien's descriptions.
Right.
It's forests, it's rivers, it's people riding horses, not camels.
Lush, vast, and full of mystery. That's the Rune Tolkien painted.
Exactly. So why the desert? Was it just easier to film in? Like Morocco or something? Or is there something more going on here?
It's hard to say. Maybe they had their reasons, narrative or logistical. But it does create a disconnect with the source material.
It makes you wonder, are we even in the right place?
Yeah.
And speaking of things that make you go, in that storyline, that mysterious dark wizard, the one chasing Gandalf.
Yeah, the mysterious figure, shrouded in shadow, very intriguing.
Black hair, beard,
Certainly fits the bill. Visually, at least.
Could it be? Is this our first glimpse of a young Saruman?
It's tempting to think so, isn't it? I mean, a younger Saruman could definitely have that look.
Right.
But, and this is where diving deep into Tolkien's timeline is crucial.
Okay.
Saruman's Fall to Darkness, it happens much, much later. Centuries later. So if that is Saruman, it would be a huge departure from the established narrative. My gut tells me this is a new character, someone they've created specifically for the show.
A new villain. Ooh. I like it. And over in Elven land, things are getting really...
Interesting.
Interesting, to say the least. Galadriel's vision, the one with Celebrimbor, you picked up on that?
It's hard to ignore. It definitely looks like the show's leaning into the whole Elven rings give you glimpses of the future thing.
Right. Which, it's cool, it's dramatic, but is it Tolkien?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Elves in Tolkien's world, they did have a certain amount of foresight, sure, but it wasn't really connected to the rings. It was more like a natural consequence of their long lifespans.
Okay.
They've seen empires rise and fall, they've witnessed the flow of time in a way that mortals just can't comprehend. It gives them a different perspective, a kind of innate precognition almost.
So not like a superpower from the rings.
Not exactly, but the show it seems like they're playing with that idea, maybe even changing it up a bit, which, it raises questions.
Big ones.
Like, if the rings are the source of this foresight, what does that mean for how they function, for their power? It's a pretty significant shift.
Huge. And it makes you wonder, if they're changing something that fundamental, what other surprises do they have in store? And speaking of surprises, you pointed out something at that Elven memorial, something I totally missed. Where was Celeborn's statue?
I know, right?
I mean, he's Galadriel's husband. Even if everyone thinks he's dead, you'd think he'd at least get a plaque or something.
You'd think. It's a curious omission, to say the least.
It's like they just forgot about him.
Well, it's probably not that they forgot. I mean, these are professional writers. More likely, it's a deliberate choice. Maybe they have other plans for Celeborn. Or maybe they're playing with the audience a bit, keeping us guessing.
Ooh, intrigue. Okay, speaking of keeping us guessing, you get the Tolkien Deep Cut of the Week award for catching this one. Rumil. Now, for those of us who haven't spent every waking moment poring over the Silmarillion, who is this guy? And why should we care?
Okay, so Rumil, he's an elf. And he's in, one sentence in the Silmarillion, maybe two. He's known for, inventing an elvish writing system. He's very obscure.
Okay, so the fact that the show even mentions him.
It's a big deal. It's like they're winking at the hardcore Tolkien fans.
A little Easter egg for the lore masters.
Exactly. But it also makes you wonder, why include him at all? Is it just a fun little nod, or could there be more to it?
Maybe he'll be back.
Maybe he's got a bigger role to play. We'll have to wait and see.
The suspense is killing me. Okay, brace yourself. We need to talk about Sauron.
The big bad himself.
He's on the move, heading to a region. And you were right. He's using that name, Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. So sneaky.
Classic Sauron, always with the deception. But you know what's really interesting about that name? Anatar.
What's that?
It comes directly from the Silmarillion, and if you remember, there was all that debate early on about what rights the show actually had to Tolkien's work.
Right. Everyone thought they only had the Lord of the Rings, not the Silmarillion.
Exactly. So for them to use a name like Anatar, a name that's exclusive to the Silmarillion, it kind of throws a wrench in things.
It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Were we wrong? Did they have access to more of Tolkien's writings than we thought?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it makes you look at everything in a new light.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because if they did have the rights to the Silmarillion, why deviate from it in other places? Why not stick to the source material more closely?
It's a puzzle for sure. Maybe they had their reasons. Maybe there are other constraints we're not aware of. Or maybe they just felt like they could take some creative liberties.
It's hard to know for sure. But speaking of creative liberties, what about Galadriel? She knows who Sauron is, right? So why not just tell Celebrimbor? Save everyone a lot of trouble.
I know. It does seem like a bit of a plot hole, doesn't it? I mean, you'd think she'd want to warn him.
Right. Unless maybe she doesn't trust Celebrimbor either. Maybe she's playing her own game.
Ooh, interesting. I like where your head's at.
It's getting juicy. So many twists and turns. This episode has us questioning everything. It really makes we've got geography gone wild, mysterious wizards popping up left and right, and now this whole Anatar thing. Did they have the rights to the Silmarillion or not? It's like, pick a lane, show.
It's a lot to process, but I think it speaks to the challenge of adapting something as complex and as beloved as Tolkien's work. You're trying to balance faithfulness to the source material with, creating a show that's engaging for a modern audience. It's a tightrope walk for sure.
Totally. And it's like, on the one hand, you've got the Tolkien purists who know every line by heart, and then on the other hand, you've got people who are just discovering Middle-earth for the first time through the show.
And somehow you have to find a way to satisfy both groups.
It's like, good luck, showrunners.
Right. But, when it works, when an adaptation manages to find that balance, it's magical.
Totally. And I think that's why we love doing these deep dives so much, because we get to really dig into these questions, explore the different interpretations, and see how it all connects back to Tolkien's world.
Absolutely. And this episode has definitely given us a lot to think about.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So as we're watching Sauron's plan unfold, those gears are turning, right? Oh. Knowing what we know now, maybe, about the rights. Does it change how we view the show? Do we hold it to a higher standard, a stricter standard? Or do we just try to appreciate it as its own thing, like its own interpretation of Tolkien?
I think that's a question each viewer has to answer for themselves. There's no easy answer, but that's what makes these discussions so interesting. It reminds us that even within a world as meticulously crafted as Tolkien's, there's always room for different interpretations, for new discoveries, and yeah, even a little healthy debate.
Well said. And you know what? This deep dive has me wanting to crack open my copy of the Silmarillion again, see what other little clues and contradictions I can find, because who knows what we might discover. And more importantly, how will those discoveries shape our understanding of the Second Age as the show continues? I guess we'll just have to keep watching. Until next time, may your mithril be ever in your favor.